hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Allison Rouse, author of We've Got Tonight, The Life and Times of This Chick right here. These other little things right here, just some fun, tongue in cheek little ebooks you guys might have a laugh at. So go down in that description, check out my funny ass merchandise. Like it says, I F Steve Jones of the Sex Pistols, and all I got was this t shirt. Thank God. Stuff like that, fun little things. One with Lars Ulrich from something he actually said in the 80s. So go down, hit that description. And while you're going down, I just want to tell you guys how much I love everybody here, how much I love the conversations. Keep them going. I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm going to respond to everything. If you want to keep talking about whatever, this, that, you do it. This is your place to talk about rock and roll, to talk about music, to talk about fun, laughter, your family, whatever. You know, this is our place to drop our daily hate, our stress, our road rage, anything, just drop it. Let's just have a little good time here because you guys are awesome. I love the connections we make here because we're so focused on just fun and laughter, and I love that. So thank you guys so much for being an amazing family, for being a lot of people coming together from every fucking corner of the world, walks of life, and we're just having a good time, enjoying the company. It's like rock and roll. Thank you guys. And speaking of rock and roll today, because a lot of people are like, well, what do you think is the big difference? I had a girl bitching at me on TikTok about there's no difference between the 80s ladies. Well, you guys don't really know because all we really have as far as groupies in the limelight are 70s groupies and maybe a few from the early 2000s. We skipped a whole couple decades, that people don't get. Me and a few other girls, like three other girls, we're the only people who really talk about the 80s and what it was really like through our books or through our YouTube channels, Dr. Dot, Roxana, or not Roxana, not Shirazi, Rita Ray Rocks. You know, there's three of us from the 80s who really talk about our exploits, that were on the groupie scene. So we don't have a lot of references to kind of compare the difference between the 80s ladies and the 70s chicks. So let's get into it, you guys. And today we're going to be finishing up my favorite local brewmasters, my favorite local brew house, my favorite local brew people, the Shades. All of them are awesome people. Don't get me wrong. We have one of the most amazing brew scenes here in Salt Lake City. I haven't said it enough. But this is their Kavik number one that was been the number one sour for like 7 years running, and I'm not even kidding. At the Great American Brew Fest, they've built a lot of really great flavors out of it. So this one is the pina colada, and it is absolutely fucking delicious. It's one I drink regularly. You guys have seen me drink it before. So, you know what? Let's just get started in our little rock and roll comparison. I've done these episodes before with different things. And today we're going to transition into two different decades. So, all right, everybody, grab your 80s, kick up your feet, and let's have a little cocktails and rocktails. Yay, Gen X. Cheers, big ears. All right. And I'm not trying to say that either era is better, whatever era. I mean, I don't think anybody should be hung up by an era of groupies, because everybody here knows that I'm not an almost famous kind of chick. That movie was a good little fairy tale, but it wasn't even true in a lot of aspects because Hollywood does that with movies. I expect them to do that with mine when I do sign a purchase deal, so they're going to twist around the story. So, this is the only big reference that society has is 70s groupies. So neither is better. I think groupies should not, they might be inspired by groupies of the past, but I think they should be into their era and true to who they are and not calling themselves Penny Lane or because why would you call yourself Penny Lane? You got to get on the guest list. Your ID doesn't say Penny Lane. So just be true to who you are. Don't try to live somebody else's rock and roll fantasy. And in the 80s, we didn't do that at all because, a lot of people, Pamela DeBar's book hadn't come out. Sweet Sweet Connie was still just, even though I met her about 18 years old, she was still a line in a song, even though we knew she existed. And I think, but we'll get into that. So 70s groupies versus 80s groupies. And, I think kind of the big difference is it was the influence of the era. Even though women were coming along in the 70s and kind of doing a few more steps than they had in the 60s. because women have been taking baby steps since the early 1900s, even though we just got dragged the fuck back. Anyway, so we've been taking baby steps for the 1900s. And the 70s groupies, they were still kind of confined to an ideology of what women in general should be. They were still kind of demure to the men. They were still kind of, groupies were more the accessory to the boys, even though the women were doing their own thing and they were being empowered in their exploits and their choices and everything like that. They were more of an accessory and a dalliance in the rock world. You know, they were kind of an additive that was setting a tone, setting a lifestyle, setting a, laughter and freedom and exploration into the casualness of of our sex lives. But I think still at the time, the 70s ladies were still kind of, we know in the 70s it wasn't quite total freedom for women yet, and that really showed in the 70s ladies and their experience. As to where 80s groupies, we had full independence, could get our own apartments, have our own credit cards, define our own sex lives, climb the corporate ladder in ways we couldn't before, stuff like that. So in 80s groupies, we were definitely a decadence. We were kind of trophies to the lifestyle of decadence. We were a necessity to be part of the expectations of a rock star. And the bigger the band, the more quality they expected their groupies to be. That's society, as I mean they, because I think with the women in the 70s, they kind of just demurely accepted that they were the dalliances, the accessories. As toward the 80s of the groupies, yes, we accepted that we were decadent to the rock stars, but they were decadent to us too, like eating three desserts. You know, we actually helped them become a status symbol of, hey, the 80s rock stars, you made it when you got a lot of groupies, right? So that was kind of the expectations. It was just a little bit different that in the 70s that they were the facade of the muses, which we all know that's bullshit, because what song was about 70s groupies besides Sweet Sweet Connie? That one, and a couple others that never mentioned anybody from the left coast. But yeah, so I think that was kind of a different, and that was a society difference, not necessarily, it was kind of a frame of mind. As to where 80s ladies, we just were bold and we were like, yeah, we are no holds barred. As to where the 70s groupies, like I said, they were still kind of confined behind their silk laden lamp walls. When you throw the scarves over the, don't do that in the hotel room. They can catch on fire. But okay. So, and I think with the 70s groupies, they needed to find an identity for themselves through the rock stars, through being a muse, through being an artist or photographer for the rock stars. So it was very kind of much of, they were dependent on an identity to grow from that, which is okay. Like I say, the rap groupies, a lot of rap groupies have really fucking parlayed their connections into something bigger for themselves, which, well done, you ladies, because there's nothing wrong with that, whether you're the rap groupies or the 70s groupies. Us 80s ladies, we were a bit more, we were expected to get shit done on our own, walk it off and figure it out, right? So we were more afraid to ask. Like, I don't ask any musicians that I'm still in contact with, or I still have, casual friendships, not like sexually, but that I still have friendships with, here and there when they come through town. I don't ask them for any promotion or help or how do I do this or whatever. I and 70s groupies, like I said, they were more dependent on their identity, but a lot of them didn't get that far because their identity was so very limited. And as to the 80s ladies, we didn't, sorry, I've got my notes right here. We didn't need that kind of validation to parlay us into something that was needed for rock and roll, because like I said, for the 80s, for the 70s ladies, they all kind of were very confined within that rock and roll world. They weren't able to just, they thought, We have to make ourselves into a muse. We have to make ourselves into a photographer. We have to legitimize ourselves for being free spirited women with our sexuality, right? So the 80s ladies, we we did not need that kind of validation to make excuses. And I don't mean that mean. So we simply wanted all the candy in the fucking candy store, and those boys just happened to be our candies, our morsels, our lollipops. We were fucking eating some of it. If we didn't like it, take a bite, didn't like that, flick it to the side. Next. So, and we had lives outside of rock and roll. Like all of us were, I went to college a little later, but I always knew that I wanted to do something that had nothing to do with rock and roll. That, and I didn't want to marry a guy in rock and roll like in a lot of the 70s. Even Pamela DeBars and a lot of ladies were like, I wanted so bad to marry a rock star. Like that's all the ambition you have in life? Really? Because the 80s ladies, we had different ambitions. We didn't have the same limitations. The glass ceiling had finally broken for us. But, so, if someone wanted to become a lawyer while being a groupie and she was going to college and just having a good time, instead of sleeping with a bunch of frat boys, she was going down to sleep with a bunch of the guys from different bands. That's fine. You could do that. And she would become a lawyer and nobody would think twice. Nobody would know her dirty little secret. Like with me, I wanted to become an architect, but I suck at math because I love architecture, but architecture and art with me, I love art. They go hand in hand. So I started studying art history. So it's like I wanted to go to work for Sotheby's. So with the 70s ladies, they definitely were very much into trying to create an identity for their professional ways, for their professional goals within the confines of rock and roll. As to where the 80s ladies, we were not confined by the backstage gates. We were like, yeah, you guys are one aspect of our lives, not the whole shebang of our lives. So, and I think that's a society thing because groupies were definitely kind of, or women in general were still very much repressed. I'm sorry if you can hear the construction. House is shaking. Yay! Should be sitting on a hot dog right now. A little shaking going on. A whole lot of shaking going on. We're going to talk about Elvis's house later in another episode. Okay, so, and also because I think a lot of women still were more afraid in the 70s to really, really express themselves, not just physically, but verbally and emotionally between the sheets. I think they were more demure in bed. I think they played the part of the delicate flower, and because you look at all the different rock groupies from the past, whether they be from the GTOs or the baby groupies or you know Barbara the Butter Queen, except Sweet Connie. I think Sweet Connie definitely held her own and did her own thing. She was like, dude, do not tell me how to put that in my mouth because I will show you how it's really done. So the Sweet Connie is always going to be our exception, the Sweet Connie scale. She definitely went about her life and her groupie exploits, no holds barred, like an 80s lady. Because she was the end of the 60s, 70s, 80s. She really, that 25th anniversary of The Who was her 20th anniversary of hanging around The Who. So I think they're kind of more demure in bed. They weren't as advanced in the experimental things that we had done as 80s groupies. Rom, it was that was wild, going getting on your knees and doing it. That was wild. And oh my god, Sweet Connie doing the whole show, and that's a natural fact. Woo! That was crazy. I mean, and it's so funny because, the Scammy Les part, she always says, it's not a job, it's fun. It's not called the blood, it's fun. It's go ahead, ladies. That's like the kinkiest she ever got because that kind of was the 70s. Of course there are going to be ladies, like I said, Sweet Connie, who's the exception because she was just having her own little private orgy every time a band came in town, and good for her. She was doing what she wanted with those men, and that's kind of how the 80s ladies were. And us groupies, we were that old adage, whores on the ladies on the arm, whores in the bedroom. We defined that. The 80s ladies, We 100% defined that little saying right there. I think yeah, the ludicrous song, "My chick bad, my chick good, my chick do stuff that your chick wish you could." That defines the '80s ladies right there. Like we were doing our own experimenting with these guys, and they fucking loved it, the rock stars, because they weren't, they weren't, you know, dealing with women who are a little more shy or not in a society where it was okay to say that feels good or no, I like it like this. So when the '80s ladies came along to the '80s rock stars, the '70s rock stars, the '60s rockers, the '90s rockers, 2000 rockers, we were like, no, we want this. Hold on, just let me do it. I'm going to flip you over and reverse you. Is she 50 yet, though? I don't know what that says. But yeah, so the '80s ladies, we were the ones holding the whip, basically. We kind of became a little bit more dominant in bed. We became more dominant to our own desires, our own needs. And the fact that, you know what, you are my little morsel for the evening, rock star, just sit here and take it. You can participate, you can throw me around, you can do what you want to do, but this is about me. Okay? This is not about me just bowing down and satisfying whatever sexual fantasy you want. Oh no, honey, this goes both ways. And if you do everything right, you're going to get it always. So I think we were definitely a lot more bold. We definitely ensured our own orgasms. That is for sure. And sometimes the guys didn't get their hoo-has because it's like, oh, you were done? Oh, thank you. That was very nice of you. Oh, sweet boy. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Oh, you wanted to come up. Oh, no, I'm a little tired. How about I see you tomorrow? Oh, that's right. You are leaving in the morning. Well, here's my number. Call me next time you're in town. So it was kind of that situation. We were the ones, like I said, holding the whip, you know. And '80s groupies, we definitely fucked like men. We definitely, like I said, we were bold. We could walk away 5 minutes when we were done and go home and sleep in our own beds, or leave the two guys from Tesla, go take a shower with Rick Savage 20 minutes later, It was definitely our world, and it kind of shocked the boys. I'm not going to lie. The guys were kind of like it, but they liked it. They liked that we were very bold women, that I could just walk up to two of the guys from Tesla and be like, yeah, I want to fuck you. I had that comfort. We all had that comfort. That was a regular thing, like when Eric Carr approached me. What are you doing here? You. I think the '80s groupies, they kind of felt like the fairies with the wands, and the muses. That they think a Botticelli painting would look like when they were having sex, which we've all seen a Botticelli painting, because some of them are having sex in a painting, and it looks like more fun than a '70s romp. Because, like I said, I mean, things were still very defined, and I'm not saying this for any individual at all by any means. I'm saying this as a generation, as what the mentality was at that time. So definitely '80s ladies, because we could work like men, we could eat like men, we could go to the gym like men, we could go to target practice like men, we could do whatever we wanted, and we could do it just as good as men can. That, and I'm not trying to say that this is now, that was just kind of the part of the progression of life that was going on at the time, because I think men, women, and everybody in between are all wonderful people. I think we all find some common ground and some equality. I think we're all amazing. So, not trying to diss men, I just think it was the first time women really fully, fully, fully owned their prowess and were not afraid to go out there and slut it around. I sure wasn't. Once upon a time, not long ago, I was a hoe. I'm admitting it because I did that shit. I was a hoe. Yay, ladies, everybody get your hands up in the air, sing the song. All right. And we weren't afraid of that, of being called hoes in the '80s. As for the '70s, I think they were kind of a little more cautious about that, because they gave a shit more about how it could affect them later down in society. Because like a lot of the '70s ladies, they all wanted to marry rock stars. Us 80s ladies, we just wanted to see you next time you were in town or you fly us out to some cool exotic location, right? So there was another difference because I think, like I said, because it was that mentality in the 70s that was still kind of the habit that human beings were expected to take by society. You know, you might go through a wild phase, but you find someone, you settle down, you get married, you have kids, you have a rompus room down in the basement with, ping pong in the guy's bar and poker table. You see some grandkids, get an RV, and there's your life, So that was still kind of that structured mentality in the 70s. So I think that that was something that was still kind of just generally on the mind of the 70s groupies. They all wanted to get married, have kids, and they just happened to be in the social circle of rock stars. So they all wanted to marry someone from their social circle. As to where the 80s ladies were like, nah, we may or may not get married. We don't know. We may or may not have kids. I personally cannot have them. That was not my choice. But, I think that the 80s ladies, we had those choices to make our career number one. To make our relationships pliable to our lives and not our lives pliable to our relationships. We don't have to change our lives to have great relationships, to have great lovers, to have fun. And the 80s ladies, we finally had that sexual freedom, so we took it to the fucking hill. We kicked in that little sexual door and we're like, "Hey ladies, we're here. We're here." We put our tassels on and started twerking. I think it's and the 80s and the 70s ladies, I think they were just a couple steps away from that. They were still kind of going what society wanted. They at some point would they all kind of did that at some point. And then oh gosh, this one. I think rockers in the 70s got away with a lot more with groupies than they did in the 80s. Yeah, we did some wild shit. We had threesomes, we partied, you know, we did whatever, hung upside down from the back lounge. That's my upside down tour bus trick. That was a fun one. Oh, the lucky guys who got to experience it. Was only a handful. But yeah, I mean, we were able to experiment more. I mean, I think that, but I think we kind of kept a boundary on certain things. Like we were not in Seattle at the that hotel where the fish and the zeppelin and the snapper, the mud shark, and meets the snapper. No, 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 you're not putting no mud shark near my snapper. No, no. But the 70s ladies, I guess that was their form of experimentation. Butter, Barbara the Butter Queen, Cynthia Plastercaster. I mean, they experimented more with objects and seafood, I guess. Yeah, no. You can't even get whipped cream down there because after a couple hours, it's just curdled like bad milk, like you left it out in the. Nope, nope. You better lick that off now. Wipe it down. As soon as you're defending yet, though. Anyway, so yeah, no. If they tried to put a mud shark next to my snapper, you'd be knocked into next week. No, no. And I think that's where 80s ladies we knew our boundaries as to where 70s ladies again it was more of a society thing that it's just let them do it. They're rock stars, they're guys. It's just okay. Just get a grin and bear it. Have some yellowtail sushi when we're done. So I think that yeah, they definitely rockers in the 70s definitely got away. And a lot of those 70s rockers I started meeting in the 80s, they definitely were trying to get away with some shit that we didn't let them in the 80s. So we broke them of those habits, 70s ladies. 90s, 2000s groupies, you're welcome. We trained the boys right for you. And like I said, I think cuz we owned it, we made our rock and roll fantasy what we wanted it to be. It wasn't something that we just sort of let the rock stars decide for us. And but either way, I think both any generation of groupies, we applaud the women for being awesome, for living their own experience. I do not get along with Gammy Les Pars because some things she said about me publicly. But anyway, so but to each their own. I think every lady who had the cojones to go out there and be a groupie while society was looking down on her, well done you. Well done you. We got to live in a time of freedom and where porn is still legal. Whew, may not have as much fun here soon, but Yeah, we had a great time. I think if we could go back to the 80s and keep that kind of mentality vibing, we'd still have some groupies at the hotel bar, not just me and my friends. New ladies, if you want to be a groupie, get out there, do it. You know, and even like the 80s, ladies, 90s, we kind of set stripping into something different than just a bunch of biker chicks at the bar walking around a pole in the in the back VIP room. Don't ever put your hand on my head while I'm doing my business, man. So yeah, I mean, I think any woman who goes out to play the band game and makes it her own story, well done you. We need to applaud you because society will definitely degrade you if you're not being Penny Lane or you know almost famous or making up some excuse because look how the 80s ladies who made no excuses are usually portrayed like the movie Rockstar. We're portrayed as dumb whores who would stand in a line to fuck the lead singer after six women already did. Oh, God. No, I smelled that on Stephen Piercy. I hightailed it out of that back lounge. Ugh. No, thank you. As to where some 70s groupies, yeah, okay, they have no problem with being the fifth in line or and I'm not saying I'm saying some because free love was still a thing and there was orgies were still very much a trend back then. And I've had my fun. I've had my threesomes that went foursome. Well, if you can't pick just one rock star, you might as well pick them all. So there you go. There's a difference kind of between the 80s ladies, and it's really more of a society difference how women in general kind of approached life, not not centered on any one particular girl, but from any era. But as far as the 70s groupies, I think like Baby Buell and Sweet Connie really were the most badass of those ladies. Because Connie, fuck yeah, Connie, you were a step ahead of your time. You were comfortable in your own fucking skin. She really golf clap for Sweet Connie, everybody. She had the whole show. That's a natural fact. She actually did have a song written about her, but yet she never claimed to be abused. She never made any excuses, just like us 80s ladies. And I think that was kind of the biggest thing because society was so judgmental at the time that groupies had to define themselves in ways that made sense in a Greek god kind of way. You know what I mean? As to 80s ladies, I'm like, so what? I'm a slut. So are the guys that are in bed with me. Don't hear you call them sluts, so don't call me slut. So we just kind of owned it in a whole different way. So there you guys go. There's the 80s ladies versus the 70s ladies. Tell me what you think. What was your era? And how did you have fun? And what did you notice? And how do you think society felt towards you during that time? Tell me down in that description. And rockers, if you made it through the 70s, 80s, 90s, tell me the difference. What you think down there while you're stopping my little boys. Anyway, so thank you guys to getting to the end of this with me. You guys are awesome. I love you so much. Truly, truly, truly. And I always love the discussions we have. I'm so excited to see what everybody has to say afterwards. And I'm really, truly appreciative of everybody who's listening, haunting, hanging out, conversing, just being kicked back, enjoying some rock and roll. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And for those of you just lurking in the nosebleeds, come on down, come backstage, become part of the family. Hit that subscribe, become a member, hit my bells, hit your share, and we'll see you on Cocktails Rocktails. Cheers, baby.